SENARA, The Sacrament is a first-person survival horror developed and published by Influence Incorporated. Released on July 30th, 2026, the game combines classic survival horror exploration with psychological horror, resource management, and multiple endings. Set aboard a massive abandoned passenger ship drifting through the sea, players slowly uncover what happened to its passengers while choosing which survivors, if any, deserve their trust. The game also has a free prologue called Before the Dawn, SENARA Prologue, which introduces one of the main characters and the events leading up to the full game. SENARA The Sacrament was developed and published by South Korean indie studio Influence Incorporated. The studio specializes in atmospheric, first-person horror experiences and spent considerable effort recreating the game setting using LiDAR scanning and photogrammetry of a real ship, giving every hallway, cabin, and maintenance corridor an unsettling level of realism. Prior to the full release, Influence released Before the Dawn, SENARA Prologue, a free standalone experience that served as both a prequel and demonstration of the game's mechanics and story. There are only a handful of weapons in the game, but that's because there are really only 4 major enemy types that you'll be dealing with throughout your adventure. There are the possessed passengers that wander the ship looking to stab somebody, shadowy smoke apparitions that suddenly materialize and relentlessly pursue you, horrifying fish-like demons that hit surprisingly hard, and one memorable encounter involving a massive wall of grasping hands surrounded by a giant eyeball acts more like an environmental obstacle than a traditional enemy. The monsters also attack more than just you and your health bar. Simply being around them slowly drains your sanity meter, adding another layer of resource management. You can restore your mental state with injections or temporarily make yourself less noticeable to enemies by taking pills, allowing you to sneak by encounters instead of wasting valuable ammunition. The captain arms you with a knife early on, but over the course of the game you also acquire a pistol, shotgun, grenades, and an empty bottle that can be thrown to distract enemies. Combat itself is fairly simple, and because there aren't dozens of enemy varieties, the focus shifts more towards deciding whether a fight is worth it or it's smarter to avoid a competition altogether. The horror in SENARA comes from 2 different directions: the monsters hunting you through the ship, and the constant puzzle solving needed to progress. Some objectives are straightforward, like locating a specific key or a fuse, while others require navigating the ship's maze-like layout, activating elevators, or unlocking entirely new sections of the vessel. More than once I found myself accidentally riding the elevator to the wrong floor because I selected the wrong destination, which added a little in frustration, but also reinforced how confusing the ship can boast to be. Most progression revolves around 2 important items. Your programmable key card gradually gains higher security clearance throughout the game, while your security card stores keypad codes you discover during exploration. Instead of constantly writing passwords down, everything is conveniently saved for you, making backtracking much less painful. There are also a handful of classic Resident Evil style puzzles that require combining objects or locating multiple places before advancing, although puzzle fans may find themselves wishing there were a few more elaborate brain teasers throughout the adventure. Almost every room contains something worth examining. Documents, notes, and environmental clues are automatically added to your journal wherever they are important, making it easy to revisit story information later on without dragging through piles of papers. One thing I will warn players about is the NPC interactions can be very misleading. Throughout the game you'll encounter a captain, a priest, and an imprisoned cult member, all of whom tell you they're giving you an important item. However, those items don't always appear directly in your inventory. Instead, they're often sitting on the floor next to the character waiting to be picked up manually. If you simply walk away assuming you received it, you'll likely end up wandering the ship and having to come back to get it. So after every conversation, go and take a second to check your inventory to make sure you actually have what you need to move on. One feature I absolutely loved is how the maps are handled. Each of the ship's 7 floors has its own map, and whenever you discover an important object, locked door, or point of interest, the map records it for future reference. You can even hover over markers to remind yourself exactly what's located there. Resident Evil 0 did something similar years ago, but it's surprisingly rare in survival horror games today. Better yet, the game also marks your current objective, dramatically reducing aimless wandering while still encouraging exploration. There are 3 different endings depending on which survivor you ultimately decide to trust. While the final sequence plays out roughly the same way with the ship sinking beneath the ocean, your choices determine who escapes and who pays the price. In my playthrough, I sided with the captain, only for him to die during the ending while my character escaped alone. Based on everything experienced, I would imagine siding with the priest results in a darkest ending, while helping the imprisoned cult member likely leads to the most optimistic conclusion, since the opening scene already shows a lifeboat eventually being rescued. Thankfully, after finishing the game, you're given the opportunity to reload and make different decisions, if you like to see the alternate endings without replaying the entire game. At $17.99 on Steam, I do think the asking price is a little too steep for the game that took me about 5 to 6 hours to complete. That's especially true considering there isn't much enemy variety, and the overall gameplay loop leans heavily on fetch quests and backtracking. That being said, I generally enjoyed exploring the ship. The atmosphere is excellent, the realistic environment helps create constant tension, and the mystery surrounding the 3 survivors kept me interested all the way through. The quality of life treasures like the excellent map system, persistent storage boxes, and shared vending machine currency always remove a lot of frustrations that usually come with survival horror games. If you're a fan of classic Resident Evil style exploration with the less emphasis on combat and more on focus on atmosphere, I definitely recommend giving SENARA, the Sacrament, a look. Personally, I wait for a sale, but if you're unsure whether this type of game you like, download Before the Dawn, SENARA Prologue first. It's completely free and does a great job introducing both the setting and the mechanics before you decide whether to buy the full experience.